Welcome to Legacy Conversations, a channel where we preserve military memories and history.
Hello, Internet. Well, I'm excited. I know there's people will laugh their asses off when I say that, including my wife. Actually, she rolls her eyes. But I am excited to speak to you. It's a great privilege and it's an honor to me to speak to you people. If you think you have a story, or even if you don't think you have a story, man, come and tell us. It's important. We're getting older, and it's very important that those following us can hear our story, good or bad, doesn't matter, so that we can understand the history of what we went through. Because at the end of the day, for us in the South African Police Force, we were all volunteers. Well, most of us, we were draftees. I mean, my own ex-brother was drafted into the SAP, but he was already an advocate or a barrister at that stage, and the security police legal office had to use for him there. But that is different. I mean, most people just came out of school, 17, 18 years old, even younger, get your military call-up papers. Yes, you've probably gone to the cadet corps, so you knew something about it. And then, of course, you arrive in the army, and that is a place for the manna. That's not a place for a maniki who's got soft hands. I don't think that's going to work for them well there, not in the old days. I recall the Israelis who were talking here with us, who were all like astonished about how the discipline was enforced in the old army. Very tough, very tough. We can look back now and laugh about it, but I do think that a few tears were also flowing. But anyway, we have somebody here who's been waiting for a long, long time to speak to us. I thank you, sir, for your patience. Really, guys, you're always welcome here, but there is a bit of a line. So just be understanding about that. If you are ill or you think you're going to die in the next few days, of course, tell me, and I will get to you as quickly as possible. But I hope that's not the case. I want to bring your attention to two books written by myself, and one of them is called When Does It End? And then a follow-up book called Where Does It End? It might actually have a third book. I haven't written it yet, but it's in my head. I might do so or not. Called Why Did It End? Now, it's a fascinating story, these books, because it's about the Jewish army. Now, the Jewish army has got nothing to do with the Israeli army. In fact, Israel didn't even exist. We were talking here about 1942, 1943. And basically what happened was there was something called the Jewish army, which went into occupied France and other parts of Europe, and they started rescuing Jews. Now, in those days, of course, the Nazis were there, and they were trying to catch these Jews and get hold of them and murder them in the concentration camps. I don't have to explain this to you. It's well known. And it so happens that Rebecca's family on her side lost everyone in the concentration camps, those who stayed behind in Europe. On my side, with my grandmother, who fled to the Union of South Africa, I believe all of them died as well. And so it's very personal to us. I wrote these books with Rebecca's assistance to educate. And would you believe, if you read the first book, When Does It End? You will find out that the Jews were not stupid. They could see this coming. They could see that it was going to happen. And therefore they started making plans to get out. But sadly, they were not welcomed. Nobody wanted them. If you read the book, and of course it's fictionalized, but the history in it is most definitely not, you will read sad cases of a ship which sailed all the way to America and they wouldn't be allowed to put their feet on American soil. And at the end of the day, they had to sail all the way back to Europe, and you can imagine what happened further. It came out in the books that Switzerland swine land. Despite all their stories that they were so kind to the Jews and they brought all the Jews in and they took care of them, actually the truth is not really that. There's a bit of a different clue there, which you'll also discover in the books. In that 50,000, 30,000 Jews were denied entry in Switzerland because there was something wrong with their passports, or perhaps they didn't bribe the Swiss enough. I wouldn't know. Matter of historical fact. And yeah, they also died in the camps. Now, for South Africans, especially the Afrikaner like me, the word concentration camp actually refers back to the Boer War of 1902. That's when that ended, in 1899 and 1902, and that is where the British Empire, that is the British Army. Yes, them, that is where they actually started hoarding Afrikaners into concentration camps. They had a scourge policy for many, many reasons. They never apologized, and 1 out of every 3 died. 1 out of every 3. It's a bitter thing. It's a very bitter thing because people don't know about it and they're astonished when they find out. Now, I've often wondered, why did the Jews during World War II and before that, why did they surrender to the Nazis? I mean, if I know I was going to be murdered in a concentration camp, I'm definitely not just going to walk voluntarily into it. I'm definitely going to fight my way out. Or I'm going to die in the process, but I will die like a man. And I understand from my Israeli friends that these type of questions are asked, were asked anyway in the Jewish community as well. On why did that happen? Now, the books do look into that. And we do look into the law, the legal system, because I'm a legal man. I understand law. I've been trained as an attorney. I practice as an attorney. So when I read laws, even if it's not my own countries, I do understand the purpose behind it. And it's a warning, which also comes out in these books. It's a warning. It can happen again. It definitely can happen again. Might not be against the Jews, but it might be against Christians. It might be against certain types of Christians, those who keep the Sabbath day. In fact, that too was predicted in the Bible. So these are very, very interesting books. If you like them, read them. If you like what I just told you and you want to know more, get hold of the books while you can. I'll put the links in the description as well. And perhaps you can know something about the history of what happened there is actually astonishing. I mean, they did rescue these Jews. They rescued a lot of Jews. They smuggled them out of Europe. There's a great gratitude towards these people, because remember, when the war ended, and this is also in the books, the Royal Navy, those Brits again, the Royal Navy actually started intercepting the old merchant ships who were taking these Jews who now survived the concentration camps. They were now going to the Holy Land, back to Palestine in those days. And so the Royal Navy started intercepting these ships, and they put them, people they could caught, or they catched, they would put them back in a concentration camp, I think in Cyprus or one of those islands, which they were still controlling at that stage. It's a horror story. It's a horror story which happened here. And once again, it may happen in the future. So get hold of the books, you read them, get hold of them, support the Legacy channel. And I thank you for listening. Let's carry on and hear what the actual video is about. So Craig, welcome here. Thank you for your time and your patience once again. Over to you, mate. Can you tell me, how did you end up in the army? And I know that your ancestors were also serving men, like so many of you. Tell us about it. We're listening.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you for what you're doing. I got onto this channel because I was interested in what was happening with the special forces, and my story is nowhere near as interesting as any of that. But yeah, guys, I'm a boring old soldier with an ordinary life and ordinary story. I was born in Boksburg in in the Old Transvaal from a family mostly Scottish, English, Irish, a little bit of Afrikaans back there. I can go back to the 1820 settlers. One of our family members was actually in the history books. He was in Dingaan's kraal. He was with Reverend Owen as an interpreter. He taught Dingaan a little bit of English because he could speak a bit of Koos and a bit of Zulu and stuff like that. So we helped him. And his name was Hully, Richard Brangan Hully. And because he is famous, someone has actually done his family tree all the way back to Yorkshire in 1520 or so. So that's on my grandmother's side. So I'm very lucky. I've got a little bit of information on that. Not everyone can go back that far. On my other side, my father's father fought in the Second World War. He was a flight sergeant. He used to work on the mines, so he knew how to fix things. So he was in Africa, Sicily, and Italy with Kitty Hawks and stuff like that. He was a very, very, very nice man. His father was actually in the First World War. He actually got injured as part of the Somme battle. I think he arrived in end of July, and 6 days later he was injured, and it was straight back to England for Kazovac. He was in the infantry, spent 6 months there, and then he came back as a sapper back to the front. So that was my great grandfather. He actually was also in the Boer War as a 16 or 17-year-old. Right at the end, he fought there for a little bit. Then he bit the end. So that's basically my family background. My father was an accountant. He was born in exactly the right time. He missed all the wars. Vietnam he wouldn't go to anyway, but Korea. And for example, he was an accountant. He had a good life, and he actually gave us a very, very good life. And we've got to thank him for taking us from working class to what you could maybe call lower middle class. Okay, so next thing, like every South African of our age, we got one day at school, these guys rocked up and they gave us a number. And this is going to be your number for the next 10 or 15 years. And I remember it still to this day, 78396181. I can't remember if it was BT or BG, but something along those lines. But I never knew what was in for me then. I was a 16-year-old, obviously. That happened in 1978. Finished school. First call up, can't remember if it was 4-side or 6-side. So Middleburg or Grahamstown. I can't remember which one that was. I deferred because I was studying. I went to do 1 year of study as an industrial designer. Didn't like it at all. Didn't work. It wasn't very good, and I'm not a very good student. So I spent 1 year, and I was out. I was a creative person, and I didn't like the workshop. So I had 6 months between. I was called up to SAI, Uppington, which was my next call up, and that was only due to start in July '81. So that was my call up. I had 6 months to kill, so I worked at an advertising agency for that time, and then the big day arrived. So go to Milner Park, I think the showgrounds, where they've got access to the train, and everyone's wondering what the hell's going on. You got a lot of young kids who just don't know what's going to happen from one day to the next. we were all pretty young. I left school when I was 17, so I would have been, there was July 81, so would have been 19 years old when I started that. I was a scroll oakie. I was never a big strong guy. I mean, I was a little bit wiry. Still used to play soccer, all that sort of stuff. But I had a smart mouth on me. I was always quick with a joke or a put down or something like that. And I was a little bit mean. I think I had quite a mean streak with my mouth. So I don't know if that was good or bad, but it saved me down the track a few times. Okay, so we arrived at Uppington in the winter. It's pretty cold at night. Bottom during the day. We're just totally overwhelmed with what's happening. You're queuing up. You're told to go here. You're told to go there, and it's, I think, one of the first things that happens, you get your hair cut. So that's the nice little short number one. I think it was. And the first part of that time is actually a little bit of a blur for me, because you get issued with your kit, your weapon. You run around in overalls for the first few weeks. You chased around everywhere. You sworn at a lot. It's like just all over the place, very, very in your face. The first thing I did was make friends with the biggest, meanest guy I could find, by way of protection or backup or whatever. And you know what? This guy, he might have looked mean and he might have, been big and tough, but he was the sweetest guy. But it was good to have him around, because he just gave me a little bit of insurance. Okay, so basics. Running around in the early morning, getting ready for inspections and things like that. One of the things I worked out very, very early was, no matter what you do, that's good. All the things you do that are correct, make your bed, clean everything up. They're always going to find something. So don't get bent out of shape. Don't get upset when they come in and they suddenly put on the white gloves and they go on the top of the door and they're going to find something. They're going to chase you. That's it. That's a fact of life. Don't get upset. That was the first thing I kind of worked out. A lot of guys were upset and complaining and bitching and moaning and missing home, and how can they do this to us, and things like that. They just did not get it. Anyway, that's okay. A few days into basics, I was at the mess near the phones, I think it was, and I bumped into a school friend of mine, old school friend, who was an intake ahead of me. And I had a little bit of a chat to him, and he said something which stuck with me, like right from that second. He said, "Whatever you do, get as much rank as possible. Okay, get as much rank as possible." He says, "Life as a troop is going to be terrible for 2 years. So just do whatever you can." So I did. I tried. The first guys that came around were, I think, probably the recce's. I didn't even bother trying for that, because I was very unfit, very skinny, not very strong. So that came in. In fact, I don't think I even knew they were there. Probably they would have just come in and picked the best oaks and just gone without anyone even knowing. Then the parabats came. Failed all the physical tests, sit-ups, whatever. I couldn't do enough, couldn't do the push-ups, blah, blah. So I was struggling, in that respect, right from the start. And so you're running out of opportunities for rank, so a little bit. So infantry school came. I wasn't able to qualify for that. And now we're sort of reaching the bottom of the barrel a little bit, aren't we? And eventually there's the last opportunity, which is section leaders course. So they come section leaders course selection here. And I remember it like it was yesterday, because I did okay in the physical test, because by this time I'm getting a little bit stronger, and that was fine. And then we were all in a line to queue up to go on orders before the major is going to give us a final yes or no. And I remember I was in the line with was in alphabetical order. So I'm Sayers, and the guy behind me was Schwartz. And we were having a bit of a chat. So anyway, so I went in before him, get called in on orders, and I come in, obviously stand at attention. There's 4 people there. I think Major in the middle. Nice man, actually, he turned out to be. And he looks at me, and you know how he's supposed to look straight ahead. You're not supposed to be making eye contact with any of the officers. You look straight ahead. And he says to me, "Jy's kak. Your fixate is kak. Jy is kak. Jy's skraal. You're not going to make it. You're useless. You're hopeless, basically." And I don't like being told that. So anyway, I swallowed that. He said to me, "I'll give you choice. You can either be a driver here in Uppington, or you can go section leaders course in Walvis Bay. So I looked straight at him. I said, "When do I have to decide?" He said, "Now." I said, "Sexy layer at Walvis Bay," like that. And he just looked at me. I was marched out. Anyway, so later on, we were busy chatting, all the guys. And Mr. Schwartz, who was one person, the next person behind me, I said to him, "How'd yours go?" He said, "No, they gave me a choice between Sexy Layer, Walvis Bay, or being a driver." And I said, "What did you choose?" He said, "Driver." I said, "I don't want to go to Walvis Bay." I said, "I don't care. I want to be a section leader." Anyway, turns out I was selected, and he wasn't. It was just a test, obviously. That's just how they run things. They put you under a bit of pressure, see if you've got a little bit of guts or determination or whatever. If you want to take a driver, you're obviously not going to be a good section leader. So see you later. And that's how that started. Section leaders course was tough. Was very tough. But I got stronger as the course went on. Found the theory all pretty easy, pretty common sense. And we had a good group of guys. I mean, they really supported each other, and we got through it. One of the things they used to do on the course, I'm sure this is a very common story for everybody. They used to mess you around a lot. It was on a Sunday one day. We hadn't been eating very well because we'd just been training. This was still when we were in Uppington Base itself. They said, "Come, guys, we got a nice surprise for you. There's going to be a barbecue." Yeah, sorry, I'm calling it a barbecue because I live in Australia now, but it was definitely a braai. Okay, we're going to have a braai. So we had to do a route march, the road directly north from SAI Uppington Base. I can't remember how far it was, maybe 20 k's, not much further than that. This is a sort of a Sunday mid-morning, maybe close to lunch by that time. And we start walking, and they said they'd said to us beforehand that there will be vehicles there, and there will be a braai. There'll be vehicles and a braai. So we said, fantastic. So we're off. Start walking. We're all looking forward to this braai. We're all looking forward to it. We are talking about it. And we get there, and yes, there were vehicles. There was an Audi, there was a Mini, there was an old BMW, there was an old Toyota. It was the vehicles of the leader group. And there was a braai too. They had polished off all the meat and the beers and whatever else was there, right? So they really got us nicely on that one. And they continued to say, "Oh, the other vehicles are coming. The other vehicles are coming." And I said to my mate Steve, I said, "There's no other vehicles coming. Right? They are messing us around. Let's go back now." So we a few of us started walking back, and we're walking back down the same road we came. And maybe about half an hour or an hour later, something like that, we hear this noise in the background on the sand road. Cars coming from a distance behind us. And as they pass us, this one car starts fishtailing, losing control on the sand road, and right in front of us goes into the ditch and rolls into the millies. So we run over there to see if anyone's hurt, so if we can help. So we run over there, and all we can smell is alcohol in this car. So we're just asking if everyone's okay. And while we're doing that, another car arrives with some of the other leader group in there, and they tell us to fuck off. Because obviously what's happened is not a particularly good thing from their perspective. So we laughed all the way back there, all the way back to base. So that was something that started off bad, but gave us a bit of a laugh. There were a few of those instances on the course, which should have made it a little bit easier for us to cope with. The most striking part of the course really was the time we spent at the Rimfastmark. Now, Rimfastmark is northwest of Uppington, up near the Okrabis Falls on Orange River. It's a hell of a place. It's dry. It's sandy. It's the mountains have got rocks on them, little pebbles, hard to walk. There's no water. It's a hell of a place. And we spent a long time there, with our weapons training. We were firing RPGs into the sides of mountains and going on the other side of hills to hear the knack and the canal of gunfire and loopgraaf op Bremen, all that sort of stuff, and a lot of running up these mountains. Man, they hurt us bad, and anyone who got into a bit of trouble had to carry the ammo case. And it happened to one of the smaller guys who was really struggling with it. So a few of us, helped him, on some of the point-to-point marches that we had to do. They used to do all the things like on a route march, you walk up, they get up there the mountain, and there's a dam full of water. They say, empty your water bottles, boys. There's some fresh water here for you. Don't fall for that stuff, because that water is brack. Oh, the guys pour their water out, that filled up with water. Oh man, I regarded everything with suspicion when I was on that course. Didn't trust them with anything. Anyway, so that was Rimfastmark. We went back there on a later occasion with our troops, but that was the course. We eventually got back to Uppington, wrote a final exam. I ended up first on the course. My friend Steve, he was second, and my other friend Basil, who were all from the Joburg area, all English Oaks, he was fifth on the course. So we did quite well, and I think that was sort of towards the end of 81. Now, I don't know if you're aware, guys, I was the last intake of conventional infantry into Uppington, outside Uppington, because it was going to be converted to Mech from the following year. So all of us were divided up into other infantry battalions all over the place, and the three of us actually were transferred to 5 SAI, which is in Ladysmith. So we had a little pass. I had my car there, so we actually drove it from Uppington, stopped off in Bethlehem overnight, and then eventually got to Ladysmith. And then we had another pass because they didn't know what to do with us. We were like the lost pillar. We've come from another place. They had no idea what to do with us. There were some troops, but most of us were section leaders and a few other bits and pieces. When we got back from pass, they started giving us our platoons. Now, again, because of the lost pillar thing, we'd been given a lot of guys who had fallen off the courses, had gone AWOL, had been caught smoking dacha, all that sort of stuff. So all the extras, the extra little bits and pieces who hadn't been in the system for any length of time. So they selected the three section leaders from SAI We were really well trained. I think we were really well trained at 8-side. When we got to 5-side, we didn't think they seemed to be as well trained as we were. But we were given our troops, and we had to work with these guys. And they're difficult characters, some of them. There were some very strong characters, a couple of guys who were a little bit sketchy, very, very tough blokes, and some big guys too. And they gave us a bit of a hard time, especially the one section leader. He was given a bit of a hard time by his guys. But we worked well with them. We pulled them into shape, and we did a lot of training. And we became a very, very good platoon. We're actually very, very proud of that. So the stuff we did then was from January to March 82. We went to Borshoek a lot, which is the field training base that 5-side used. We did conventional and on-ops training there. We also did one trip to Elandslaagte, which is an old site of one of the Boer War battles. We did some training there, and we became really good. A lot of fire and movement. Time after time after time, where you're walking through the bush, you get attacked from the front, rear, the side, or whatever. You've got to go down, analyze the situation, and decide what to do. My voice was cactus. Every single day, all that shouting and screaming above all because it was live as well, most of it by that stage. All of it is live fire, and just directing where your mag group's got to go and all this sort of stuff, and fire movement, all that sort of stuff. It's really, really tough on the voice. So it was quite funny. By the end of the day, the guys are laughing. Okay. So that was end of March. So we did a lot of vehicle counter ambush drills and things like that. So it was a lot of different things we were doing. It was actually quite interesting in a lot of ways. So it was a bit of fun, actually. I mean, so the one night we were practicing ambushes, and it rained, and it was some scout. We didn't have any blankets or anything like that. We ended up lying on hugging each other to keep each other warm because we were wet and cold. So little stories like that. I'm sure everyone's got exactly the same story along the way. Okay, our first, we weren't really ready to go to the border just yet. I think they had a period of about 6 weeks where they didn't know what to do with us. So we were sent up to northern Natal in April, May 82. We were based at Jacini, which is a multi-purpose base from memory. And from there, we were divided up into sections and sort of sent here and sent there. The first week, I think, we went to a place called Lousberg, on the top of a mountain, where they had a troposphere communication center. I've got a picture of this, actually. I can send. We basically guarded the place, just one section for a week. I don't know what one section would have done if someone really wanted to take it over, but anyway, we were there. Every day we used to go down to the little town. There was a sort of a place where we had meals, but at night we were all on our own. When we got back to Jacini after this trip, we had a very, very unfortunate event. We arrived just as the aftermath was happening. So some guys were sitting around the mess area, bored. They were taking rounds, R4 rounds, taking out the what do you call it? Anyway, and then just pouring the gunpowder on the concrete tables in different patterns, setting fire to it so it burned into the table, things like that. But then the mistake they made, they put the points back onto the rounds, put the rounds back in the magazines, and they were fucking around. And one guy took loaded R4, played with his mate, arm around the neck, shot him twice through underneath the keel, and They fought for 3 hours to save him, fortunately, but they weren't successful. And we arrived back as all of this was unfolding. So there was a really sobering event for the whole platoon. You know, what boredom can do, and stupidity, and that guy's life. His life was over, and the person who shot him he got into big trouble for that as well, and so his life was affected too. It's it's one of those realities. We also went from Jacini, we went up to areas like Angola, did some operations with the police, some anti-dacha growing operations where we'd get winched down out of an Alouette helicopter into the thin ravines where they were growing the stuff, and that was a lot of fun as well. I liked working on those little helicopter trips. From there, we went up to a place close to the Mozambique border called Pelindaba, which it's sort of close to Cozy Bay, somewhere around there, a little bit west of Cozy Bay inland. There we set up a base, the way you would set up a base helicopter landing pad and all that sort of stuff. And they taught us how to actually set up a proper base in the command center, things like that. So that was just a little bit of filler stuff, really. Back to Ladysmith, a little pass, short pass, maybe 7 days. And then when we got back, it was going to be the real stuff. Okay, so our first tour of duty, if you want to call it that, I can't remember what the South African term for it was, but we were sent to Sector 10, 5-4 Battalion, and we were based at Ilundu, which is east of Inana and west of Congo. Smallish base. And when we first got there in June of '82. It was very, 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 very dry. The nights were quite cold. So our very, very first patrol, we headed out east out of the gate. I had my sleeping bag and I had my Inana with me. I think I walked maybe not even 3 k's. Said to the guys, "Stop." I buried my sleeping bag. It's too big. And I just made do with my Inana. And all I would do is, it's lighter, it's thinner, but you just get in there and you just tie yourself up and you just don't move the whole night. And I wasn't going to carry that sleeping bag. You remember those old sleeping bags? They were so shit, big and cumbersome. So, okay, let's just take a bit of a break, collect my thoughts. That time of the war was just the previous year. We'd had Ops Daisy, and what was the other? Daisy, sorry, Protea first, and then Daisy, which did a big job on command and control and weapons caches on the enemy. So we were quite fortunate to be in this area when we were, because the enemy was a little bit depleted and a little bit weaker. So we did not have as much, fighting as we could have had at other times. So we regarded ourselves as fairly fortunate. But we were the first platoon to have contact. The first platoon to have contact in our company. We'd woken up out of a TB the one night. We did a 360 around it just to see if we could see some tracks, and lo and behold, we were surprised. We actually found some. So it's amazing what the training does. You've been trained for so long, and we were so keen. We were so keen to actually do something with it. So we had someone on. Steve went around the one side, and the other 2 sections stayed on the southern side. So we had eyes on the enemy. We were talking to the locals there, And I don't quite know who gave the order for this attack to start this way, but our lieutenant decided that maybe dropping a mortar bomb in the middle of the Shawnee would be the best way to do it, because it was quite a distance. Anyway, as soon as the mortar hit the detonator, you should have seen these guys. They knew the enemy. They started running straight away, and then we did a section attack through the village. It's really, just on autopilot, basically. We did what we were trained to do. Cleaned up a little bit there, did a little bit of operating, and then obviously did contact report and all the information that you have to get back to base, and how much ammunition you've used, and all that sort of stuff. And that was our one and only contact. There was a bit of a follow up by some of the other members of our company to catch the guys who had bombshelled. There were only about 3 or 4 of them anyway. Very, very small group. So that was the excitement for the first, probably in the first 6 weeks we were there, and that was just about it. We were also involved in Operation Meerboss, which was an operation just to make sure that we keep on Jiva and what was it? Anyway, I'm forgetting, because I had that name in my brain. You might have to cut that part out. So we actually were there in support as infantry, mobile infantry. We were on biffles. My biffle was actually right at the head of the queue of the convoy of the support group driving into Angola. I was a bit nervous about that, because I'd heard all the stories about, even if it's a tar road, they can get hot drums and dig holes into the tar and put landmines in. But I didn't avoid it. It was obviously swept many times before that, so that was okay. And we were basically there in support. I mean, the rear. It was mainly a rifle and a paratrooper and a driven operation. But it was a lot of fun seeing the rifles there and all that sort of stuff. So it was actually quite a bit of fun. Not being right at the point, so you didn't have too much danger, but it was good to be part of that. Unfortunately, a few years later, actually quite a few years later, I found out that one of my school friends was one of the paratroopers who was killed in that Puma that was shot down. I think there were 12 parabats who were killed in that Puma. They were shot down, fell on its on its roof. Very, very sad, because this guy was a fantastic athlete, just amazing guy. This war took so many lives, and it's just when you actually know somebody very, very closely, it's quite upsetting. As I said, I only found out about that many years later, so it's still sort of bothers me to this day. So that was Ops Meerboss. Of course, I do have a couple of pictures from that operation, just and maybe we can put in there. Okay, the second tour to same sector, same battalion, same base, Ilundu, was our most eventful and most fun one we had, because we had again, we had 2 PF. Well, we had a PF lieutenant and a PF platoon sergeant, because our guys were a little bit problematic, so they had to make sure that they had a few serious guys there in charge. And this lieutenant, I won't give his name, because he was crazy. He was absolutely crazy. He was a very ambitious guy. He was a very, very smart guy, but he had ambitions to climb the ranks faster than anyone's ever climbed the ranks in their life before, because he made us do all sorts of weird stuff. So it's actually, I enjoyed working with him. My friend Steve had a little bit of a problem with him, because I think he targeted Steve a little bit for whatever reason. I'm not sure. You can see in some of the pictures, Steve is he's looking a little bit in his shell, and he's not like that at all. But It was quite a fun time. The one night, this lieutenant comes up with this plan, Operasi Octave. Okay, so we go, what's that, Lieutenant? He says, no, we're going to lie 8 ambushes in one night between the platoon. So, yeah, exactly. So there were 2 Shaunas quite close to each other, and as you know, or you probably know, there's normally a north-south route, entry and exit, and an east-west, roughly east-west exit on all of these Shaunas. So 2 Shaunas, that makes roughly sort of 8 entry points. So we split up the platoon into groups of 3, sometimes 4 people, and we laid an ambush, or 8 ambushes that night around those 2 Shaunas. Nothing happened, totally uneventful, boring. We had the night vision glasses and everything. Well, I did anyway, because I was our section leader, but saw nothing. Nothing was moving, so it was really a big non-event. The one day we were actually getting a little bit hungry. We hadn't been given rations for quite a while. It was supposed to, give us rations. It was supposed to be this day, the next day, but there was always an excuse. The helicopters are busy, or this is busy, or that's busy. We don't have that available. So you're just going to have to keep it going on, because our patrols were sometimes 30 days. We'd be out. We'd be just basically, by the time you get home, you're back to the base. Your clothes are just sitting and sticking to you like I don't know what. So we were getting a bit hungry. We came across a little village, and we bought a goat. Just bought a little goat. I don't know how much we paid, maybe 20 rand or something. I can't remember what it was. And we started walking. This was sort of late afternoon. Now walking towards where we were going to TV for the night. And Steve had the goat. He had his kit on, and he had the goat around his neck with like that. And this thing was wriggling. It was wriggling. And Steve, who's got a little bit of a temper, you won't mind me saying that. He eventually got to a point where he was bothering him too much. He said, "That's it. I've had enough." Dropped his kit, dropped the goat, put its head on a bit of a log, had a knife, cut its throat. No, that was a dead goat, ready for dinner. Okay, so we had something to eat for later. That was good. We got to a little village where we got the can't remember the word. Sorry, because I'm forgetting all my Afrikaans words again, and my African words. The thorn that you put around like an area to protect something. Anyway, it was a water hole. We actually filled up with water, and there were a few cattle lurking around, a couple of bulls and things like that. And there was one bull that charged Steve a couple of times, just a little mock charge, just to give him a little bit of a scare. So Steve was a bit annoyed at this, and he was keeping an eye out, and he noticed that it was actually doing it to the lieutenant as well, and he actually started charging the lieutenant. So Steve dropped to one knee, took aim, shot this bull through. I don't know where he got him exactly, but it was a good shot, because he fell exactly where he was in a heap. Okay, so now we've got a goat, and we've got a big bull for dinner. I had two butchers in my section. They were my group, actually. They're very, 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 very funny guys from a slightly sketchy part of Joburg, Brixton or somewhere, or Newlands. Yeah, that's right. So they carved this thing up and divided it amongst the guys. We actually took that and walked a little bit further, walked a dog leg, and went into a temporary base overnight. But I don't know why we bothered, because we made these huge fires to cook to cook the meat. So if anyone wanted to find us that night, they had no problem whatsoever. So, but we had a good feed because we were really hungry, and we thought that was a really good night. The next morning, we get woken up. Get your asses back to base. The chief of the village had walked all the way back to Ilundu and had complained, rightfully so, that we'd actually killed one of his animals. So we were in a lot of trouble. So we had to go straight back to base. The lieutenant had to find 200 rand. We had to find 200 rand amongst the rest of the platoon. So we pulled all that together. We had to pay restitution to the chief and the tribe, which was the right thing to do. And then the upfok began as well, because now they got into us big time. I've never had one like that before. So up and down the walls of the base, and there was a really tough one. We laugh about it. We laughed about it very soon afterwards. That was quite funny. The only other thing I can think about for that particular trip was we had, I think it was this trip. Our staff sergeant, RSM, was from 5SAI, obviously. Roybart, we used to call him. He's quite well known, I think, in the circles. He's quite a famous guy. Tough guy. It's very tough guy, but quite fair. And I made the mistake of writing in one of my letters to my auntie that we weren't getting fed properly, and this got me into a lot of trouble, because the staff robot took me into the mess, sat me down, and proceeded to feed me wheat bix, dry wheat bix. Force feed me, actually. He made me sit there, and I had to eat this. I don't know how many pieces it was, but it was a lot. And then he made me drink water. And as you know, wheat bix expands. So I had a really full, uncomfortable stomach. And then he decided to also give me another little upfok while I was in that state, and I probably deserved it. Oh man, that was terrible. But again, you look back and you laugh. So, okay, Koos, I think I'm going to go on to my last tour of duty at Inana. So can we cut there? Okay, awesome. Okay, let's go.
Yeah, let's go. This is fascinating. I've got a lot of questions.
Sorry, man, it's so not military stuff though. This is like it's sort of like it's playtime really when it comes to that. But it's
no, but that's real army life, isn't it?
Yeah. It is. So something I did forget is obviously with the kit we were all carrying. As section leader, I obviously had a radio, a couple of spare batteries, help out with maybe like a mortar or two, things like that. I took we had claymores with us most of the time, so we would in our TVs at night we'd set up claymores, and I always used to be very nervous putting in those detonators and stuff like that, because that's a terrible weapon. We never ended up having to set one off in our TVs, which I'm quite grateful for, because the backblast is also pretty effective if you haven't got a decent tree. And there's not that many big trees in Avamba land. It's pretty flat and not particularly dense bush. I mean, except in the rainy season, not very big trees. Okay, so our final tour of duty up to Sector 1054 Battalion, we were actually stationed at Inana, which is 54 Battalion. Actually, is it 10 HQ as well? I'm not sure. Anyway, we were at Inana. We'd actually, when we flew out of Inana the last time, because that's where we flew into to go to Ilundu, we swore at Inana because we were so glad to see the back of it. We didn't like Inana very much, and little did we know we'd be coming back to be staying there another 4 months. So this was an unusual little trip of ours. We did a lot of vehicle patrols towards the end, maybe the last 6 weeks or so. There was talk of them needing us to help with some helicopter operations, so they selected some guys from different sections and platoons, put them into sticks in that instance, and they did a bit of training on the Pumas. I wasn't part of that. I was unfortunately left back at base, and I would have to do all the clean this, pick up that, move that sort of stuff, or organise the guys to do it anyway. And a lot of mine sweeping every single morning to the sweep from Inana to Ilundu, which is about 30 k's away. We only did half, obviously. And we did that every single morning for about 4 weeks, I think it was. That was really boring. And we'd have different teams each morning to do that, and we'd flip the coin to see who's going to get the first stint, because that's when it was a bit cooler. And I was very lucky with my coin tosses. I don't think I lost many at all. So I was very lucky to walk the first I don't know, 5 k's or whatever it was, and then on the vehicle for the rest. So that was a bit of a boring time. And nothing of note happened during that time. We did a few little ops and patrols here or there, but it was a pretty boring time. This tour, we were actually given a national service lieutenant for the first time, whereas before we'd had PF guys. This was a national service lieutenant. Poor guy, shame. We made his life miserable. We, as section leaders, we were particularly tough on him. I remember the one patrol we were on. We'd been on a TB overnight, and by this stage we so blasé. The 3 section leaders actually sleeping in a row together next to each other, which is not what you're supposed to be doing. Anyway, we did that, and the lieutenant came up to us the morning with his kit on, everything. He was ready to go. We were still lying in our sleeping bags, and he was saying, "Come on, are we going to go?" And we were saying, "No, Lieutenant, we're not going to go today. We're not right now. Give us a little. We're going to have some coffee first." Whatever. It was really bad. We were so full of shit at that by that time. Not too proud of that. We shouldn't have been so mean to him. But he was a nice guy. Okay, so when that finished, we flew back to South Africa in a Flossie, back to 5 SAI. Then a little pass. Can't remember how long it was. I think it was around our 40 days by that stage. I think that's the sort of time that it was. So I think a 40 days pass might have been 14 days pass. I don't know. Can't remember. Either 14 or 7, one of the two. And we got up to all sorts of mischief on that pass. Some of the highly illegals driving through red lights down Louisbourg Avenue and at all sorts of times of the night, drunk, pissed, getting pulled over by the cops, showing them we've got short hair, we're in the army, so they don't give us any trouble. I don't know what was going through our brains. You get a little bit of a not a death wish or anything, but you just start feeling a little bit bulletproof maybe when you're that age. We're 20 years old. No, not really that mature. You've just gone through something which is weird. Anyway, so we're back to 5 SAI for the last month. They didn't know what to do with us there. They were Los Pilar again. And they divided us up in the province. So my section was actually 2 sections, I think, that I was in charge of at that time. We sent to a place called New Hanover, which is just northeast of Pietermaritzburg, to guard a substation there, part of the electricity grid. So we spent our 2 weeks there just basically buying beer at the local bottle store, sleeping in the forest at night, walking around the place a few times. Just didn't feel really stupid time. But the guys were all over the place. I found out afterwards, some of the guys were in northern Natal, some of them were eastern Natal on the coast. So it's just the last month, just basically doing not very much. And then back to base for the Clara parade. I think our Jock Harris was our commandant there. I don't think he was a colonel yet. Jock Harris, we liked him. He was a good guy. And so we had the Clara parade. Our parents were all there. They stayed at a motel up the road. Steve and my parents stayed together. And that was basically the end of that sort of stint, or your 2 years. And then you go home to supposedly have a normal life. All I can say is that first 6 months back home, you really don't know what you're doing. You're just behaving so badly. You've got this freedom now. You're out of control. You're drinking and driving. You try to catch up with girls all the time. You've got no self control. If you've got a job, you're lucky. You can get a bit of focus that way. But it was an interesting sort of change from what you'd spent the last 2 years doing. Okay, Koos, can I talk about my camps as well?
Yes, please go ahead, because we need a complete story, and
Yeah.
I'm still making notes, man. I'm making notes.
Oh, sorry, man. Am I talking a bit fast as well?
No, you're good. Just talk. You're
Okay.
great.
I'm rambling, man. Sorry. All right. So, okay, I'll start again. Okay. I was allocated to Boksburg Commando because I was from that area, and they pretty much had the whole of the East Rand as their responsibility. My first camp was back in the operational area, actually, in 1984, December 84 to February 85. We were sent up to Kookveld, up near the Zebra Mountains. The base was on the top of a hill called Sodelit. We had to do some retraining at Oshivelo on the way. That was tough for some of the older guys who hadn't actually been in the army as recently as I had. I was still reasonably good shape, but some of the guys were a little bit overweight, and when they got up to Oshivelo, they don't mess around with it. You straight back into it. You're running. You're doing fire movement. They put you through your paces, and a lot of guys were struggling. One guy had to go to hospital. He had a bit of a heart scare, but they got us into shape in those few weeks, and then we were sent up to the base was at Apua, with a little bit the main base. We were actually briefed, and I'll never forget this. The briefing that they had, they brought us into the big mess hall, and we were all sitting down, and the sergeant major's briefing us, and he's saying, "No mana kan vir jou sê jy moenie in die konenie swem nie, en jy sal sê nee, sommer ons sal nie in die konenie swem nie, maar jy sal. And I'm going to tell you, don't sleep in dry riverbeds. Don't sleep in dry riverbeds." And you'll say, "No, Sergeant Major, we won't sleep in dry riverbeds. We won't." But you will. It's because that's just what you guys do. And you know what? It's exactly what happened. It's exactly what happened. We were on the Kunene. walking patrols, and you get bored. And there's some beautiful rock pools in the Kunene. It's a fantastic area. The Pepper Falls, I think it is, a little bit further up. Very stunning place. So we'd sit in the rock pools, fishing, things like that. And the middle of the river was actually quite fast flowing because it was actually quite shallow. So we could walk into the middle, on the pebbles, be it maybe to like knee or thigh height, and then basically just lie down and let the current take you. And it takes you about 100, 200 meters around, and it just pulls you close to the pools where the guys were fishing. So we would just do that for a few hours just to kill some time. So that was, the crocodiles don't really like the fast flowing water, so that wasn't too dangerous, but still, you've got to be a bit careful. And we saw the baboons on the other side, on the Angolan side, with binoculars, some big baboons, baby. It's just groot cattle. So we mucked around there for a while. We didn't see any enemy, no spoor, no nothing. It was very, very, very boring time. The other thing we were told not to do was to sleep in dry riverbeds. We did one night, and there was a storm. It was that time of the year. It's a lot of storms, and the water woke us up. We could hear it coming, so we got out of there very, very, very fast. I mean, the reason you sleep in dry riverbeds, Koos, is because the sand is nice and soft. Because everything else is rocky, it's scrubby, it's got stones, all that sort of stuff. So that's why you sleep in dry riverbeds. That was a 3-month stint. That was not too bad. Obviously, time in the Sogalit base, you do guard duty. You're either 1 RC or 2 RC. You got the early shift or the late shift. That gets a bit sort of boring as well, but you make do. A lot of guys got bitten by scorpions, and it's just all sorts of that kind of rubbish happens. And then afterwards, after that camp, went back to Boksburg Regiment, and that was my last camp actually in an operational area. From 85, 86, 87, and 88. We were all really focused on what was becoming a little bit of a domestic situation in terms of unrest. So we had to patrol the townships of the East Rand, places like Davidson, it's closer to Springs. Those were a little bit hotbeds of activity at that time. And this is where I demonstrated myself as not to be a very good soldier, because I'm a pacifist by nature, and I didn't really like a lot of the things that we did or were asked to do. We were supposed to drive through the townships in our buffels with our staaldakke on, looking pretty intimidating and aggressive. My section didn't do that. We didn't wear our staaldakke. We drove through briefly, said hello to everybody, and then found a butcher, got some meat, went to get some beers, and then found a little spot outside the township where we spent the day, keeping in radio contact just in case anything happened. And we'd also play soccer with the local kids if we found a soccer field. So I would do a little bit of that. Around about this time, I think it was 86. I did my sergeant's course at Doornkop, based just outside of Joburg. That was a 2 or 3 weeks, maybe, I think it was, something like that. So easy, so easy. Me and my friend while the other guys were studying, we'd barbecue. I took I took my Weber from home, and we'd be having nice steaks every night. So that was That was a bit of fun. So I was a sergeant for a little while. In my next camp in 87, also, but these were all around December, January time. So they were either a month long or 3 months long. That was how the system worked. Camp in 87, they made me a candidate officer. So I had my little white thing on my epaulet, and I was given a platoon. Unfortunately, I didn't get on with the captain. This guy was actually a replacement for a commander. The captain was supposed to be. He got sick on literally the first or second day of the camp, and he had to go home. So they had to find someone else, and they found this guy from Cape Town, he'd never been to the East Rand in his life before. Anyway, so he was the commanding officer for this camp, and he and I didn't get on really well because I felt that he was, because I was a CO not a proper lieutenant. He was giving my platoon all the shit jobs, all the crappy times, the shitty places, and I took it for a while, but eventually I arced up a little bit with him, and I probably shouldn't have. And that's why you can probably say I'm not officer material. I'm more like NCO material, looking after the guys. I didn't like the way we were treated, or he treated us. So I said something. So the following camp, of course, I was back to sergeant. No officer stuff for me, which I don't mind anyway. I mean, I come from a working class family. My family's all miners and farmers and things like that, so I was comfortable. And that's why my last camp was in 1988. And I'm sure you know, when you go on camps, your company's supposed to pay you, and you're supposed to have your job kept for you when you get back and things like that. But I was in advertising, which is a little bit of a different business. So I had trouble with my jobs a couple of times. They'd move on, so I'd have to find somewhere else. It was highly illegal, of course, but it was very hard to prove and to follow up. And I was pretty employable at that time. I didn't have trouble getting a job, so I was okay. But it was I can imagine that some guys would have had a lot of hassle trying to keep family life together, work life. I wasn't married, or I didn't have any children, so it was easy for me. But camps had a big influence big impact on a lot of young guys of our age. Of course, I think that's about it from me. I've come to the end of my list. I'm sure I've forgotten a lot of stuff, but that's essentially my small story. Not a lot of fighting, but that's what happened.
Yeah, and I want to thank you because, as I say, I mean, this is real army life stuff. This is important. It's funny to me. I'm reading a book right now. I think it's the second book of 3 of them. I'm still looking for the third one, about Field Marshal Montgomery. And it is quite funny because I had the first book. Now, there's a story behind this, and people will forgive me for just telling it. I was supposed to leave South Africa permanently in 2012. But then it didn't work out, but I had to then move to my mom in Bloemfontein to take care of her. And then, of course, I had to get rid of all my whatever stuff I had. Basically, I arrived with my suitcases in hand, like something like that. And I had a whole bunch of books, like 1,000 books in my library, which I was collecting since I was about 4 years old when I started reading. And so when I was in South Africa now, these books, through a long tour of different people, ended up with my friend, fellow presenter, Anita. And on New Year's Day, I went through all 1,000 books. It took me the entire damn day. And 500 of them I gave to her to give away, sell, whatever. And the rest I said, one day I will bring them here to the library in Phuket. And one of those books was the first one of trilogy, I think is the English word for 3 books, about Montgomery. And so these are 800-900 pages books, these are serious books. So I read the first one, which is the only one I had. I read it again. I was about halfway through, and I realized that, wow, this thing's going to stop after El, which, of course, your granddad would know everything about. And I'm really fascinated. I want to know what Montgomery did afterwards, because I rate Montgomery extremely highly. And so I invited General Bowman, the Special Forces commander, to a 3-2 battalion meeting, and there we had wonderful people there. And on the way back, I'm driving now, I say to him, Boris, I'm reading this book of Montgomery, and man, I don't know where I'm going to get this other book. And he's like, yeah, of course, I have it in my library. Do you want it? I said, sir, seriously, you're not serious, because I'm taking this book. I can't read 900 pages in 2 days before I leave. He says, you take it, my man, you take it. And so I'm reading that book. And he had a thing about which he called belly aching, which I think in Afrikaans might be the word naafgat. Does that ring a bell with you, naafgat?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, so I want to know about that, because you say to me that this first platoon you got hold of on the Jock Harris there at 5 SAI, a little bit of troublemakers, to put it mildly. I mean, the Dakar workers, and not everybody wanted to be in the army. Let's be honest, and it wasn't for everybody too. Let's also be honest. So I think you can say the word naafgat by them, but naafgat also to me means you tripper after your 40 days. You become like a bit strange. Not really accepting orders. You just want to get done with. You want to leave. You want to carry on with your life. Go to university. Go and have a job. Things like that. So for you as a corporal, how do you deal with these people? Because you're a national serviceman yourself. I mean, you're also thinking of going home and, meeting somebody and carrying on with your life.
For me, I didn't really think about that a lot. I focused on where I was then. I dealt with that in a completely different way. I used to, whenever we had like a break or time where we were doing nothing, because we didn't walk much during the day when we were up on the border. You walk in the mornings and in the evenings, because it gets a bit hot during the day. So you had a lot of time where you're just basically sitting around. And I kept myself sane by literally writing lists. My friend Steve, whenever I speak to him, he says to me, "Oh, you've told me." He says, "Why were you always writing lists?" I said, "Well, it kept me, sane. I write lists about everything. My favorite music, my favorite this, my favorite songs, books, foods, you name it. It just sort of kept me occupied. So I didn't really, long for anything. I just kept my mind, busy and focused. I was where I was. I couldn't control it. I couldn't change it. Actually, sorry, because I've just remembered a story I did want to tell you. On the section leaders course, we had a guy. I won't mention his name. It was an English guy with a short surname. He was quite a big guy, quite a physically imposing guy, but he was very smart. He was actually a physicist in city life. He was a little bit older than us because he'd actually finished his studies. Very, very smart guy. And the leader group had identified him. Obviously, he was selected for the section leaders course. They thought he would make a good section leader. But they were riding him a little bit. They were in his ear a lot and things like that. And then one day he made some sort of mistake. I can't remember what it was. He got himself into trouble. And then that evening, the the leader group got us together, and so they got this guy to stand to one side. We were in a like a quadrangle. Our barracks were in a quadrangle, so he stood on the one side near the entrance, and the rest of us had to run around the quadrangle time after time after time after time, and each time we went past this guy, we had to say, "Thank you," whatever his name was. Thank you, whatever his name, each time. And we did this for quite a while. I can't remember how long exactly, but it was at least an hour. And where this guy would just have to stand watching us run around and thank him each time we came past. That destroyed that guy. He fell off the course that night. He was just mentally. They found his weak point straight away, and just poked it and poked it and poked it. And big as he was and smart as he was off the course, just like that. That's the sort of things that these processes just do naturally. Unfortunately, I was never the biggest guy or the strongest guy or anything like that, but I found a way to make it work for me in terms of getting the rank that I could. I broke a few orders along the way as well. I've got a bit of a brain, so I can see right and wrong and where I can get away with things and where I can't. So I did sort of break the rules a little bit, but not in any way that actually got my men in danger or anyone into any real significant trouble. So that's what happened with that. I don't know if that answers the question, Koos, at all.
Yeah, but it brings me to something else, because I've spoken to quite a few Special Forces members here, as you know, and it's a great privilege. It's a privilege for them, especially because, most people normally don't speak to anybody. They like
very, very close.
For clubbing themselves, unless you're part of a club, very respectful, but that's it. But two of them actually said a strange thing to me. One was RSM James Taitge, and the other one was Sergeant Major SW Fourie. He was probably the nicest Sergeant Major I've known in my life, but not when he's working. It's a funny thing with these RSMs and Sergeant Majors is the generals too. They're very nice people today. And then sometimes when you record them, they get this look in their face, in their eyes actually, and you're not talking to a civilian anymore. Suddenly that guy just switched, and you see that. But all of them said to me, when a guy comes to the army and he has a problem, like he's smoking weed or he's not behaving, they normally say he had a problem before he came to the army. It's not the army which turned him. How's your feeling on that? How do you guys feel about those statements?
I think it's true, and I've seen both those interviews that you referred to. I think, and it did strike a chord. The army is there. Unfortunately, the army it relies on the weakest link. You are doing something that is not natural, that is not logical. You are told to advance towards danger. You don't run away, things like that. You have to deal with it, and you need to be conditioned to do that. And that conditioning can take a lot of obviously physical impact as well as psychological, because you're fighting against your natural instincts, and especially as a national serviceman, where you mostly don't want to be there. You're doing it because you have to, and you do need to go through this pain and this repetition and all of this stuff in order to reach a point where you don't question what you've been asked to do. So if your commanding officer says, go down, do this attack, even if it's dangerous, you end up doing it because you've been conditioned to do that. I think people who have got problems or not problems, little issues going in, I think sometimes they can be overcome, with a bit of care. But unfortunately, as you know, the army is not a place for where TLC is the buzzword. You don't get a lot of arm around the shoulder. What's wrong, my little friend? Can I help you with anything? That stuff is what comes from your mates, or should come from your mates. In terms of, we're in it together. Let's help each other try and get through it together. And one of the things as well, some guys struggle with is, when they chase you around in the morning before it's even light in Uppington. I remember 4 o'clock in the morning, it's pitch black. They're chasing you and you're running. The first time that happens is everyone runs and tries to be first back because they think it's going to save them from a run or save them from the next one. Okay? Some guys take a long time to learn these lessons. It was quite strange. Eventually, you telling the guys, listen, what are you doing? Just let's run in the group. We'll go together, we come back together. If he's going to send us 10 times, you're going to go 10 times. That's just the way it is. But let's just do it together. And I think once you get that sort of in your brain, and then I think some of the guys who've had some problems coming in can maybe start settling down a little bit. But if they're constantly fighting the system and fighting, complaining and raving on what's happening, I think they shouldn't be doing this to us, and that can work on someone. And I think they exacerbate any problem that they might have had, especially if it's anything to do with family or things like that. So I think essentially what Taker and Furi said is correct from my experience.
I actually felt a bit sorry for these instructors, because I always wondered to myself, and perhaps you can answer this, but to go and wake up a platoon at 4 o'clock in the morning, storming in there with roaring like a person possessed with Satan himself, kicking at beds, switching the lights on, shouting, throwing water, whatever, you know what I mean. Surely this guy had to get up at about 3:30 in the morning to get into uniform, work himself up in such a rage. Man, they had no life. So how do you guys plan this thing the previous night and say, okay, guys, we're going to raid the platoon tomorrow morning? How does this work?
I think what they used to do was just take it in turns. So they weren't up every morning doing that. I think they realized that. So they Frikkie, vandag is jou beurt, môre kan ek dit doen? I think that's what they do. But you're right. I mean that would get quite tough for them as well. Yeah. But I think they worked that out.
The one thing which always struck by me was when you finally get to your passing out parade where you're done now and you're going. And I asked around, I said, guys, you feel sorry for the guys who's replacing us here, who's coming for basics now. Because we would leave a number 2 there in the cupboard for them as a present or whatever. We would scratch up the floor. We would do anything we could just to make it harder for them, simply because that's what we found when we arrived. And I suppose the police were a bit more civilized than the army in many ways. But do you ever feel sorry for these trainees? Is there ever deep inside you a feeling of, hey, this is hard, man, this is hard?
No, I don't think I felt sorry for anyone coming in as a group, because we're all in the same boat. What I did worry about was that those guys who did have a little bit of a soft sort of side to them, who maybe weren't quite as thick-skinned, things like that, and who took things to heart. Guys who were sometimes maybe a bit closer to their mom instead of their dad a little bit, and just those are the guys I sort of you look at a guy and go, you're gonna struggle, yeah, but a little bit, Where I was a little bit, I was okay. I mean, I knew what I was Not that I knew what I was in for. I mean, I didn't know a lot of people who'd been to the army before. My cousin had been in. He was a couple of years older than me. He was a small guy. He used to play scrum half, so he was the driver of a. I don't know if he was Saracen or whether it was an Eland, but that's what he did. But I didn't really have a lot of guys to talk to about what the army was actually going to be like. But I worked it out very, very quickly on the ground, and I think that was lucky that I was able to do that and sort of survive. You know, in my respect. But some guys, I could see the guys who were struggling, and you try and help them, but some guys were just too sensitive and things like that. So,
It's a funny thing. I remember seeing on the borders, I saw a Sputnik washing machine thing which you turn. It looks like
a concrete mixer.
Yeah, that's exactly what it looks like. And would you believe, I always thought to myself, you know what, if I was a bit more Jewish than what I actually am, this thing can work in the civilian market. If somebody can patent this. And sure as hell, I've seen people that's actually done that exactly.
Yeah, they do. I think a lot of third world countries have them. I've seen them on videos and stuff. Yeah. Look, one of the things that sticks with you, Koos, when you come out of the army is you develop skills, right? You develop all the military skills. I mean, when I scan something, I scan it from the right, not from the left, because that's what they taught us to do. I look through bush, not at bush. When I walk, I still walk very softly to this day because of Kaiki look. That's what they teach you. So I still do that sort of stuff, which is basic. Obviously, the weapons training was very valuable as well. We shot everything that there is to shoot, whether it be Russian or Chinese or whatever. We got experience with all that sort of stuff. I hate the Uzi. The Uzi is the most terrible little weapon you've ever seen. So there's all that sort of stuff, but then there's the things of how you deal with people. My section was a very, very mixed up section. I had two English guys. The rest were Afrikaans guys. Some were well educated, some were not. Some were tough, some were not. And you working with those people is quite a good skill to have. It's management of the lowest level essentially, but still it is people management. And you need to be able to work with them and get the best out of them and coordinate them. Otherwise, it's going to be terrible for everybody. And I think we were able to do that in our platoon quite well. I think we had a good platoon by the end of it.
How did these Dachau workers, how did they get those Zolle and things? Where did they get the Dachau from?
One of the main guys was in my section. He was my he's the guy who used to pace out the steps. Because I'm not sure if you remember, Ovambaland is very flat. There's not a lot of landmarks and things like that. So when you navigated, you needed to be very, very accurate with your steps and your your compass readings and things like that. So the guy who did my steps was really good at that. But he was one of the guys. He was from Durban, and he to this day he lives in Sweden now. But he's still a little bit of a ratbag. We talk a lot, and they find ways to get the stuff. If they can't find that, they find petrol. They sniff petrol. They're so desperate to alter their mind, sort of that mood. They find a way. But they were all good guys. All good guys. They're just finding their way.
Okay, I'm asking, what do you know perhaps what happened to that Swartz guy, the guy who was standing behind you, who became a
I don't know what happened. I don't know what's happened to him. I don't know what happened to him in later life. but he was actually shot. Unfortunately, as part of, because he also went up to the border. He didn't end up as a driver either, by the way. I mean, as you know, that was a bullshit story. So he ended up being just a normal rifleman. And he was he ended up being shot. I can't remember where it was. It wasn't a serious injury, but we had to casevac him. And funnily enough, I also remember dropping the side of a biffle thing on his head once by mistake. So I gave him a good clunk there. I didn't get him full, luckily, because he would have been dead. But he was walking in the wrong place at the wrong time when we were stopping to check some tracks or something. But lots of stupid stuff like that.
Yeah, perhaps we should explain to people why we're laughing here, because there is a video out on the buffle, by the way. By the time you people see this video, that video has been would have been broadcasted already, the buffle. But
yeah.
I'm correct. It has like an armored side which falls down. You
yes,
lose it.
Yes. You've got armored thing on the side that hold together with like like two sort of metal things, and you pull them out and they fall down. Yeah. So we didn't use that a lot. We just mostly just jump over the side. And me, because I'm at the front of the buffle behind the driver. For me, it's easy just to jump over onto the front, onto the engine, and down. Normally, when you're debussing in a conflict situation, obviously you got to get out of that thing pretty quickly. So you go straight over the side. It's about, I don't know, 10 foot high or something. But just to remind me that crazy lieutenant we had for that one camp, the one it was the rainy season, and the Shaunas were a little bit wet, maybe like 6 inches of water in it. We the section leaders took over the buffles, so we got in the driver's seat, and we were doing all sorts of maneuvers and stuff in there, talking on our radios to each other, having all sorts of fun, all stupid stuff.
So you have like a designated driver there, but what happens if there's like a flat wheel? Of course, theoretically, I suppose you go into close to fence surrounding the vehicle, but who actually changes that wheel?
We didn't do a lot of drills actually regarding that. Now that I think about it, so I think we just made it up as we went along. But I think we all would have just jumped in. The driver will be the one who's issuing orders around what has to happen, I imagine, because he's got much more intensive and specialized vehicle knowledge. But I just remembered something which I'd like to tell you, if you don't mind, and actually cover some of this point that you're talking about now. When you say what happens when. So we were on a biffle patrol. It was basically maybe west of Congo, northeast of Ilundu. No, probably more east of Ilundu. So still in Namibian territory. Wasn't in Angola, but it was quite close to the border. And we were doing a lot of bundu bashing, and because it was rainy season, there's a lot of foliage, and you couldn't really see where you were going a lot of it at the time. So we had a bit of a problem. A branch had gone through the radiator of one of the biffles, and it had immobilized the biffle. So we basically had to stop there. In that case, we did put our biffles in the correct sort of positions, and we sent one of the vehicles back to Congo to go get a spare part.
The word which we were looking for, I think, is rondom verdediging.
Yeah. All around the fence. Yeah.
All around the fence, which I call close to fence, which is more bodyguard type of thing. But after all these years, we don't remember everything. But I understand that on the buffle, you had like a water tank for the troopers themselves. We had on the Caspers too. On the Caspers, we had 200 liters. I know on the Rattles and the buffles, it might have been a slightly less. But how do you control the water there? With anybody was thirsty, just fill up his bottle and down it, or we just with duration?
It depended on the time of the year, because our first stint there, it was dry season. It was really dry. There's virtually zero water, so we come across water holes here and there. Some of them are disgusting, but you're given all these tablets to purify the water, but they make the water taste terrible. So eventually we didn't even bother using that. We would just take our shirts and filter the water through our shirts. And by the end of the patrol, our shirts are not very clean, so you can imagine. But your stomach it's really strong. You can eat and drink anything because of what's in your system. It's amazing. So during those seasons we were a bit more careful about water. But during the rainy season, we did a lot of walking patrols as well as biffle patrols. We weren't always on biffles. And when we're doing the walking patrol, you've got your bivvy and things like that. And being in Africa, just about every day it rained from about 4 o'clock for maybe half an hour or an hour, and you can collect plenty of water then too. So that sort of rainy season is pretty easy. We had one funny story though. I don't know exactly how it happened. I've got a picture of it, I think. We had a guy come from Durban. He was sort of a replacement. I think he was a one-liner. I don't know who he was replacing or whatever, but anyways, he suddenly arrived in our platoon. And one day we were at a water hole and filling up. And all of a sudden, I look around and the biffle has rolled down the embankment into flat. It's a massive one of those flat water holes. Not one of the deep ones. It's one of the flat ones. It's not a water hole. It's more like a water reservoir type. There were a couple around, and it rolled back into this reservoir. And it's like off in water. Got a picture. That's so stupid. We had to get someone to get us out. It actually wasn't my fault. I wouldn't let something that stupid happen. But it was one of them.
Yeah, a lot of things happened. When I visited the School of Armor Museum, I met a major there. Wonderful fellow, but one of a new army, if I can put it like that. And a lot of the people out here is just violently against the SANDF, which is your right to be, but what I've seen of them was really a different story than what they say. And he showed me a files. He had like files in his office, and these files were this thick, man. It was at least 5 or 6 Bibles, New and Old Testament, on top of each other. And would you believe, I asked him, what's this? And he says, no, this is all the rattles and Olifant tanks and buffles which rolled during the old times. So it's not a new thing. We see these pictures of there's an Olifant tank lying on its side. Everybody's laughing about it. Oh, look at these people. No, it happened, guys. In an army with youngsters there, you're always going to have somebody who thinks he's Jody Scheckter or who was driving fast in those days. Alan Prost, I don't know. You know what I mean? People who think.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you about malaria pills, because in the police, they were quite strict about this, but we had to believe, which I'm sure is wrong, but perhaps the 7 Mech people can tell us about it, is that it would take away your suntan, man, if you take too many malaria pills. And if you go back to the States, which is South Africa, it doesn't matter where, you do want faded camouflage uniform in the first place. You mean Washington Jeep. That's fine, because then you're Omar now. And you also want to have a tan, to impress the girls. I don't know why. One guy I knew cut a heart in his uniform, and he got arrested for damaging state property. He had to pay that, and all sorts of bad things happened to him after that. But anyway, you would stand on parade and they would arrive with a stupid pill. It's like a wit pillikie, like a white one. And quinine or something, I might be wrong. And then then you stick your tongue out, sort of, they put it on your tongue like you're at a Catholic church, and then you swallow and they give you a bit of water, and that's the way it does. But sometimes they would They would sort of hold the water bottle out and, oh, you don't want to, then give it to a guy next to you. And then you have to swallow that thing, which is as bitter as sin. It is horrible.
Yeah,
It's dreadful. Yeah, extremely. How did it work in the army? Would you as a corporal then also enforce this biological weapon there on the trooper, or how does it work? Each man for himself? Drink your pills, boys. You're not a child.
No, you're supposed to be the one to make sure that they take it. But I can't remember whether it was one of the, because there's quite a few different anti-malaria tablets, right? So I think that one might have been chloroquine or something. I can't remember. Anyway, there's a whole range of them, and some of them you only need to take for a while before you actually go to the area. Sometimes you have to take them all the way through. So I can't recall this being a thing like, daily, for example. I don't think so. I think it was like a very short course, and once it's done, it's done. Yeah. But yeah, as the section leader, it's your responsibility to make sure that they take it.
Before I forget about the last question I have, I was asked by somebody to ask the first corporal, sergeant, line commissioner officer of the SAI if I can find, is whether you people had the same as in the British Army, a foot inspection. In other words, you had a guy lying there sticking his feet in the air, so you could laugh at the blisters or make sure it's clean and things like that. Any such things with you guys? And if so, smell. I want to know if there was a bit of a pong there or not.
What a question, Koos. Yeah, we had foot inspections for sure. I remember my feet being inspected. I was very fussy about my feet. I didn't end up with a lot of blisters because I made sure my boots fitted properly. Things like that. I had an ingrown toenail in the first few weeks of basics, but once the toenail was gone, that was it. It was fine. But yeah, foot inspections for sure. And some guys did smell. In fact, some guys just had bad personal hygiene, irrespective. And occasionally, the troops would take it into their own hands to wash someone who needed washing, things like that. So, but I mean, it didn't happen a lot to me. I must have just been lucky. Anyway.
Yeah, the old broom inspection, you can wash somebody quite clean with Omo and brooms. Only do it once or twice. There's a bit of blood involved, of course, but it works well, one of those things. I also recall that we really need to speak, if some of you out here listening here to me now can tell me about that little pamphlet which the army used to give out, and they would say to you, bring, like a little lock or something, a hong slot, and something for your clothes and a little bit of Omo washing powder, things like that. I wonder if those things still exist. I haven't seen them in any museum, but it would be interesting to see how they were thinking about them on it. But for you looking back, do you have any regrets? Do you have any message? Do you have anything for somebody perhaps who recognize you here and think of that corporal or sergeant who might have been kind or might not have been kind? I don't know.
No messages per se. I would just say, look, as I said, I'm a pacifist. I was fighting for a system I didn't necessarily believe in, but country needed it, and that was what it was at the time. Make the best of it. You're there with your buddies, your friends. You've got to make sure that you guys all get out, together. And it's a lot of it is to do with circumstance, Chris. I'm sorry to say, that guy who was killed, but doing stupid things at your senior base. Some guys, they go on leave. They wrap themselves around a pole on leave. One of the best soldiers we ever had was a tiny little guy. You might see him in the pictures that I might show. Tiniest little guy, very, very, very small guy, smaller than a jockey even. I mean, I'm talking very, very small, skinny, but the heart of an absolute lion. This guy, he would carry what the others carried. He would do what the others did. He was in Steve's section, and it just shows you it's not what your body's like or whatever. It's what's in your heart, what's in your brain, and what your mind can make you do. And I think if you can harness that in a positive way, you can get through these sorts of things. Unfortunately, the guy I'm talking about, he died. He went through the whole army with all the trouble and the tribulations and the struggles that he had, and he came out of it, and then he ended up, dying in a car accident a few years afterwards. It's just sad, and it's a circumstance, and you've got no control over it. Unfortunately, you just got to do what you can do at the time.
Okay, thank you. Guys, I really found this very, very interesting because it's one thing to speak about the big campaigns and the things, and there's a space for that, and I really enjoy it. But when you get down to the basics of it, while I was talking to Craig, I could almost smell bully beef. And I could smell polish, kiwi polish, things like that. I'm sure it brings memories to many of you. If you want to see about these things, what the troops room look like, go to the Pro Patria Museum or look at the videos which we made at that museum there at Fort Skamskop at the Voortrekker Monument. Because what they did, it was fantastic, and only half of us is in the videos. But they took a room of the 1980s, which is a typical lad's room, the scope is there against the wall. There's, if you don't know what's a scope, don't ask, I'm not explaining. And there's, everything is lying around. It's typical, the guy. And then right next to it, they have his army room or his bed, perfectly made up. Everything is there. Man, it's such a difference. You have to see this to understand. And I recall Rebecca looking at this, and she said, that bed's not made properly. And of course, there were quite a few people around looking at it. Immediately. We saw she spotted a little thing, man. It looks like a hair, which isn't where it shouldn't be. I remember doing push-ups once because a bloody fly was sitting on my pillow. And the first thing the sergeant said to me at the top of his voice is, that your F fly? And I said, no, Sergeant, it's not my F fly. And that's when he plucked his mood totally. Guys, all of you have stories to come and tell us. Please come and tell us. Share your experiences here with us, because remember, there's going to be some people, your children, your grandchildren, even other people are going to want to know what happened to you, what changed you, what made you what you became today. And it's experiences like this which has changed you. It's not really the marching around. There's a lot of people who marched around and they didn't really change. But it's when you're in there and you're like amongst a manner, in a dangerous place, in a danger zone, that's where the difference comes in. So thanks, Craig. Once again, I apologize that you had to wait so long. Sadly, it's the way it is with us now. And thank you for this. Really appreciate. God bless.
Thank you, Koos. Can I just say one more thing before you go? I don't know if I've got an opportunity. The time that I was operational and also doing my camps, I regard myself as very fortunate because, as you know, with the history of how the war went, I tell people who don't know, I say that the war lasted almost 24 years. People are shocked; they've got no idea. I'm not talking about South Africans. I'm talking about people around the world. It's like a forgotten war. But I was fortunate at the time I was there because it got really hectic. 87, 88, 89, conventional war, fighting against a well-trained enemy by that stage. We'd lost air superiority. We were getting, wasn't having all our own way anymore. And I was just glad that I wasn't in that time, because that was really, really tough.
Yeah, that's true. It really depends on when you were there and what was happening, and also where. And some people had a lock of it raw and some didn't. But look around on the legacy videos, you will find QT Carnival videos, places like that. There's a lot of them coming out as well. And then you will understand that it became a conventional war. And if you start listening to what the Air Force fighter pilots are telling us, the videos are out on that also, they will tell you they were flying into air defense systems which were last seen in North Vietnam. It was that great. I mean, it wasn't just a few men walking around in a bush shooting at people. It wasn't like that at all. It was a total war going on at one stage. And then there were problems right in South Africa, which we didn't even touch on, which was also a very difficult operations, especially for the army, to be involved in the townships and trying to make sense of what's going on there, since nobody really knew what was going on there, except that it was bad, very bad, and extremely bad. And then you still had the law hanging over you, because if you make a mistake on the border, you could still, I suppose, get away with it. I'm not saying it happened. I'm just saying it could be, because it's more rural. But if you make a mistake in shooting the wrong person in a township in those days, I guarantee you it's not Israel. You will definitely not get away with it. You will not shoot somebody in the left knee uh, across from a fence and think you will not go to jail. You will definitely end up in jail. There will be a public outcry. The entire world will be there. The entire press will be there. You're being watched every second with cameras, things like that. It was really, really hard in the town. So it was much harder. From my experience, my humble experience, I think the border was much easier in that aspect than in the townships, where you really, really had to make quick decisions which could stay with you. And as we used to say, the courts can take all the damn time in the world to see whether you made the right mistake or right decision or right command at that time. And mistakes were made, sadly so. Wasn't always done on purpose. Guys, come and talk to us. Thanks, Craig, once again. God bless to all of you. And I hope we see each other soon.
Thank you very much, Chris. Appreciate it. And thank you very much for what you're doing and the opportunity. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I suppose I can tell you now we forgot to press record, mate.
Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and ring the bell to receive notifications.